when the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alz, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priess.
Hello, everybody. It's Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Don Priess, and this is Love Conquers Alz. Hello, Susan.
Hola. How are you, Donald?
I am terrific, and how are things in your life?
Well, you know, I stabbed my eye last week, not on purpose.
It's looking so much better.
It is, but it still looks really dark. It looks like I didn't sleep well. But it's I'm making excuses because I'm so vain this way. I cannot cover the bruises. Well, but it's such a freak accident. I just have to share it with you guys because I was going to bend over and pick a weed out of my beautiful garden that I've created and did not notice that there was a stalk, an iris stalk that is like literally a sword. Hadn't opened its flower yet. It went directly in my... It's stiff. It went directly into my eyeball. Like, in the eyeball. And I was like... And my contact lens flew out. And I was like... My hand instinctively went up like this. And I was like, my eyeball's going to fall out. And I will be... All the things. I'm going to be blind. How do I do it? How shall I look? What will I look like? What's going to happen? How do I explain this freak accident? And... So I went to the ER, and thank God for ChatGPT because it talked me through it. It's like, Susie, I'm here with you. Don't even worry about it. Here's what you need to ask the doctor this. And it starts asking me questions. And it's like, I was afraid to look. It was gross. But I only...
You literally look like if, you know, in a horror film.
In a horror
film. Or a
film.
science fiction film. I mean, her eye was black. And blood. I mean, it was blood red, but it was dark blood red, and there was no whites
everywhere
of her eye.
Everywhere,
and it was
all over,
bubbling, and it was really gross.
It was bubbling.
I hope no one's eating right now.
Yeah, don't eat. Don't eat and listen to this. It's so disgusting. But I thought that my eye was going to fall out, like it was going to be, and then my friend said, "Well, Allison, my friend, that's a mutual friend of our guest, said to me." Maybe your eye will change color. You'll have two different color eyes because that happened to David Bowie. And then I was like, I like that. Maybe that would be very cool. And I thought for a second it was, but it was hard to tell because the white of my eye was so swollen that the color part, the iris part, was sunken in. No, it was so horrible that I wore a patch. Patches are not good. You have no peripheral vision. So I'm pouring coffee to the side. This is not good. It's not elegant.
And no depth perception. Yeah.
No depth perception. Yeah. It's terrible. So now it's got that nice yellowy look like jaundice and the blood is going. It's really lovely. I'm attractive right now. Nice. I could probably pull somebody, right? Now?
Oh, absolutely. Without question.
What do you think, Don? You're a guy.
There's a lot of weird people on the internet.
Say the right thing. You better say, oh, thanks. Thanks. Thanks so much. I could continue to wear the patch. It's a good look, I think.
Yeah.
I won't be able to walk well. Just sit me down and then I can look cool.
But you're healing and your back. I could feel it. Your back, your energy's back.
Dancing. The first thing I asked him is, can I still go to my hip hop class? He said, yes, you can do that.
Yeah.
So then, therefore, life was still good because I can dance. And our guest that's going to be on in 2 seconds, she's supposed to come and dance with me.
She will do that.
And she's still threatening to, but she still hasn't come. I keep telling her.
She's very busy.
She's busy, but busy. Come on. I want to see this dancer.
We can talk to her about that.
Okay, I'm just setting it up. I'm setting up all the things, all the words. All the words are coming out right now. All right, so I know you usually do the introductions, but I just want to preface this by saying, before you do everything, is that this is not only an incredible filmmaker and activist and a caregiver and incredible human being that I really admire. that, she's just a good person. She's talented. She's, and by the way, I was looking at her bio. I didn't know she was neurodivergent. I want to ask about that. So I'm very interested in that. See, she's very sexy that way. She has a lot of things going on. She's very, very, surprising, and surprising is sexy, right? I'm leaning into the sexy because she also has a podcast called Filthy MILFs. And so
Ooh.
I know, yeah, and it's really good, you guys. I was a guest. I was a little afraid. I was okay. I did okay. I stood up. They're very funny. It's a great podcast, so I'm putting the word out there. So anyway, introduce her so we can get talking because we have a lot to talk about.
I'll do that right now. Ellen Ancui is an award-winning writer and director known for what she calls traumedies, darkly funny stories where women dig their own graves and complain about the landscaping. A neurodiverse storyteller from Long Island, Ellen has written for television, including Malcolm and Eddie, founded New York's solo arts group, and even gave the original Upright Citizens Brigade their first home. She's the co-host of the completely outrageous, outspoken, uncensored podcast, Filthy MILFs. Her directorial debut, SAVERIO, shines a light on a form of elder abuse called granny dumping. It's now an Oscar-qualified short for 2027, has played dozens of festivals worldwide, winning multiple audience awards and a directing honor from New York Women in Film and Television. And now she's developing the feature version of SAVERIO. And in her spare time, she loves being a guest on Love Conquers Alz. So let's not wait another moment and say hello to the one, the only, Ellen Ancui. Hello, Ellen.
Darling.
Ancui. Hello, darling.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Yes.
I'm kicking myself. Why didn't I have you on even earlier to talk about this? So this is where I've been so busy thinking about, nonprofits and being Jane Fonda and getting out there and advocating, trying to do that thing. But I'm settling down now. I'm getting my groove back. I got my groove back.
It's a lot to start a nonprofit. My gosh. I mean, you're kidding me, right? On top of everything. You just weren't busy enough.
Yeah, she didn't have enough to do.
I don't know, maybe it's a sickness. I just don't want to face that. I just need to keep busy.
I know. I think it's something as we, age gracefully and fearlessly. Mm-hmm. We are full of more, ideas, life experience that we just want to put to use. And so that's what's happening. I'm telling you. You're
it's
living
exciting.
Your best.
I get excited. Mm-hmm. So we saw your movie. We saw the short film last year. I think I was one of the first to see at your first screening. And I absolutely loved it. And I was like, audiences are going to love it. The way that you framed it, the whole story, this sort of unexpected sojourn of this woman, this young woman who you would never expect. It's the unexpected, right? Of having to pick up the pieces in our society that our society has disregarded, and it's left it to people who aren't really trained or even know about these situations, right? They're not equipped to be able to handle this, and so. I know, Dawn, can you give us a little short synopsis of the film? Because and then we'll talk, because I have questions.
Well, I call it a coming of aging dramedy. That's my little play on the word. And it's about a young, very ambitious woman. She's in her 20s. She's on her way to a big networking party. And she makes a quick stop at a convenience store. But when she gets back in her car, an old man has been abandoned in the front seat. And now she has to grapple with, getting to this party that she's already late for and dealing with this abandoned old man. And it really tests her morality, her priorities, and it's like you say, there's a lot of surprises, her humanity, her empathy. I also say it's a journey of empathy. And I do appreciate you talking about the surprises, because I tried to build in a surprise every step of the way, because that is one of the truths around caregiving. You cannot predict it. You do not know I mean, you plan and plan and plan, and even if you don't plan, which many people don't, and still there was just so many surprises and unknowns because, we're dealing with the aging person, and it's not something
we don't talk about
lived. We don't talk about it. We don't have
Right.
enough information on it. There's not enough dignity around it. There's more shame than dignity around it, or people just wanted to go away rather than embrace it as a part of our journey. Yeah. So anyway, that's the story. It does sort of grip the audience pretty quickly, and there is a lot of comedy in it, just in her behavior and how she responds to him, and also how he responds. But and actually, I did that on purpose because I wanted the audience to be entertained as well. It is film, after all. I don't always love, being taught things in movies, but if I'm taught things through an entertaining way, without, learning without learning, then I tend to really appreciate that. So I tried.
But it wasn't preachy. It didn't feel preachy at all in any way, shape, or form. It
was
very
organic.
Yeah.
It's organic. I mean, I feel like My Mom and the Girl and your film is so, there's so many things that are similar, that it comes from authenticity. And so that when you're authentic with your storytelling, then you really can resonate with everybody. Even if it's not their story and they've not experienced it, when it's authentic, it pings really well.
I'm so glad.
Right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, we always knew older people would relate to it, either because they were caring for their parents or because they're an older person, facing this now. But more than anything, I wanted the young people to connect to it because I wanted them, they're our future. I wanted them to see themselves and develop empathy as well. And it has played so successfully on that level. I can't even tell you. That is the most gratifying thing. The young people, in fact, I think get more out of it than anybody else. And that's
it's so
my
important.
Surprise.
It was our surprise too, because before we even did it, I would tell the story about, these three disparate women who should have never ever met, in any other situation except that one had Alzheimer's. And I was like, just what the world needs is another Alzheimer's film. No one's going to want to see it. And then I thought, well, maybe this is an opportunity because it's unique. There's a lot of humor. My mom was just funny, so she fed it. It was like I couldn't write the shit that I got from Mom. And it was just a matter of like puzzling it together. And it really gives people permission to laugh when you provide that for them, and it gives them permission to lean in, don't you think?
I do. Yeah, I think that's really an important ingredient, just in storytelling in general. So it is something that I try to do. I also I feel like it gives me a little leeway to then go deeper, maybe get a little more uncomfortable because I've given the audience a little safety with, I'll take care of you. I'm going to make you laugh. I'm going to entertain you. Now I might drop you into something uncomfortable, but it's okay. I got you.
100%. 100%. And I love that you're connecting with younger generations, because that's part of our mission too with Roar, is to connect with the younger generations. So because it's equal opportunity. We're all getting older. It was a surprise to us when after a screening we'd have young couples come up like that, clearly in college age, and saying, oh, thank you so much, that's my grandma or that's my aunt, and oh my gosh, makes so much sense, and da-da-da. It was just, that's such a, those are the awards that you get, and the letters. I'm sure you get so many people writing you and thanking you, and you don't even realize how many people that you're shifting in their way that they look at things.
Well, it's only in the film festival circuit, so it's a limited amount of people, right? It's the audiences who are part of a community that's enthusiastic about seeing film, and specifically short films, which, there are some platforms out there and YouTube, etc. But the idea, and that's why I want to do the feature version, is there's way more story to be told about the caregiving. Yeah, I mean, you did it with your documentary,
Yeah. I actually wrote the script for my mom and the girl because people said, this is what happens after when they cross that street. Like, where are they going? And then I don't know I got sidetracked with another job and whatever. The point is that I think they got enough out of it. I almost think it's better for me that they didn't know what happened after. It doesn't matter, because what was important is that those three women significantly changed each other's life and made a difference. Talk about granny dumping, because I don't think people really understand it, and it's such a problem, and it's part of that this whole broken elder care system that we're living with and that we need to reform. But
yeah,
talk about that.
So I experienced it firsthand, and that's how I found out about it. I was at the Albertsons in Los Feliz. I came out, and there was a crowd surrounding an old man who had been abandoned, and I only found out, from talking to the other people there. And the manager was very, reassuring, and don't worry, folks, and we've got this taken care of, and social services is coming. So when I got back to my apartment, I started to research it, and then the term granny dumping came up, which is a phrase that was coined in the 80s by sociologists. So it had been obviously a problem for a while, and the statistics are, in just America alone, over 100,000 people a year are abandoned, and usually by family members or people who are just no longer able to, or who no longer want to take care of them. And you more often than not, they're people with Alzheimer's, because, as you know, it's a very challenging disease to be alongside. And so that becomes untenable for some people. They don't have facilities. You reach out to the various resources that are out there. They may not have the ability to afford certain resources that would make their lives a lot easier. In fact, I saw a short film in the same block as mine at one of the festivals, The Flip Side. And we get the 50-something-year-old son who's just at his wit's end with his, 80-something-year-old Alzheimer's mother. And she's rather abusive in terms of unappreciating him, comparing him to her other son who's just the bee's knees. But, of course, he's not there helping to take care of things. You realize that, even though they have decent clothing on, they have no money. They have no resources. They have no health insurance. And so he ends up in a park with her. They're just walking, and he's just taking the verbal beating from her over and over. And, he leaves her there, and he calls the police and plays dumb. I don't know. There seems to be a woman in the park. She's all alone. I thought you should know.
Oh, wow.
So it's devastating. And I'm not going to say you agree with what he did, but there is a side to it that you could see.
Understand. You can understand it. And it's
Are there
really
statistics?
again.
Go ahead, Susie. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just going to say that again, it goes back to the system and setting it, the way the system's set up. It doesn't support people who have dementia. It doesn't support their families properly. It doesn't give them the tools that they need to be caregivers that can actually survive caregiving. And also, I just wanted to add in terms of granny dumping is that it also often happens from hospitals. So somebody will, because if someone doesn't have Medicaid and they just have their Medicare, and then they have Alzheimer's or some form of dementia, they go into the hospital, and they don't have their own voice. Right. They have no place to go afterwards, and nobody to care for them, and there's no reason for them to go into rehab. So they don't know what to do with them. They put them on the corner. They did literally.
Yes.
The hospital puts them on the street, and that is absolutely shameful. That this is
it's
happening.
Disgusting and disgraceful, and it's shocking. And I've been made to understand that some of the homeless people, or many of the elderly homeless people who seem crazy, are these victims. And what's also interesting is, it's revealed in many different ways, or it's expressed in many different ways, granny dumping. As a result of doing these Q&As on the film festival circuit, have heard from many people who have either experienced it or seen it, or in one situation, one Q&A, there was a woman who said, I need to tell you a story. This happened 15 years ago, and this is a big, like, aha moment. We were in a theater in New York City, and there was an old person there, and they were there when we arrived, sitting in the seat, and they still were there when we left, and I'm realizing now that was a person who was abandoned. And she started bawling her eyes out, and the whole theater just like, And then just this last film festival I was at, a woman came up to me. She said, I'm a nurse. I've been at the state-run facility for about, many, many years. We see people dumped in the back of our building all the time. It's just heartbreaking. It's a human being.
Are there statistics as to how many are either have dementia, Alzheimer's, and how many are just physically disabled? Or it just runs the gamut, and because obviously somebody who's still got their mental capacity, they can go and ask for help.
Well, that's
somebody with dementia, that's not going to be an option, and now nobody knows. They, at least those other people, I'm not going to say that's a positive. They know where they came from. I would assume it's more people with dementia and Alzheimer's because it's less easy to trace.
They say that, and they say that, and it might also be people who are either schizophrenic and untreated or undiagnosed, or some other type of mental illness. So it's I don't know how many statistics there are around that, but when I was learning about it, they did say the majority of people have Alzheimer's or dementia.
Yeah.
Right. And the problem is that in a certain stage of Alzheimer's and dementia, you can, unless you really know the signs, they can be mistaken for, mental illness. And a lot of people, like my mom, got locked up in 72-hour lockup when she was she was agitated on her way to the doctor's office when they were taking her from her facility. And instead of understanding that she has Alzheimer's, they just thought she was having a psychotic break. And this is what happens too. So we just, as a society, we just don't have enough knowledge about this. And we also, people with dementia are so stigmatized that they're, even in the healthcare system, they are the bottom of the what's the word? Food chain. They're at the bottom of the food chain. It's like, they have Alzheimer's, they have dementia, and they're old. Let's push them out.
So what's the big deal, right?
They're not going to know anyway.
That's the attitude, right? That's the attitude.
No, I think that's it. That's right, and even from the family members who may feel bad about it, but probably ultimately feel unburdened, and that's the other sad thing, that they haven't been supported in a way that they could, again, empathize and move through this with dignity all around. I mean, to me, the word that I use over and over again is dignity around it. And I don't know how we get that in our society, or how we encourage people to figure it out regardless of income and, socioeconomic status.
It's humanity. Again, it comes down to, like, we have our priorities, and what we covet as, valuable is not a human being anymore. It's what they can bring to society. And at a certain age, we've decided that they are, the only thing they're worth is how much you can bill off of them, until you can't bill off of them anymore. So they become a commodity, and
a drain,
or you can bill off of them. So that's like, they become a warehouse, something in a warehouse, until they're not worthwhile at all. So, and because we are an ageist society, I'm going to get on my soapbox now, but because we're on an ageist society, we can't, it's very difficult for people to look at that as actually happening, and that we should actually care about it. And why does that happen? Because we're afraid. Because everybody's actually afraid to look at it. It's scary. So
I mean, also, I don't know that we're teaching enough about caregiving in general, and what that looks like and what that means. And I think people think they hear the word caregiving and they think changing diapers, or you know what I mean? It just like goes right to something horrible versus showing up, just being there. And I don't know. I mean, that's another thing that I'm hoping, we can impart certainly to these young people, but to everybody, that just show up, and just be there. That's the first and most important thing. And
community. It's community.
It is. Kind of a two-part question. If you were to come upon somebody that you suspect this has happened to, do you go to the police? What steps do you take? And does our system, are there penalties for dumping your loved one and leaving them abandoned? What is the?
Yeah, there are. It's not legal to do that. They create safe havens for babies, fire stations. If people want to abandon their babies, but they don't really people will leave them outside of a nursing home. So I guess that's their best effort. Right. My daughter is adopted, and she was abandoned. She was left outside an orphanage. So maybe it's no surprise I have a kinship to this subject matter.
Totally.
Yeah, she was abandoned. She was left in a box, and wrapped in wool and cotton, and it was, like something ridiculous, like 10 degrees below zero. She was hospitalized for 3 months. She couldn't stay in the orphanage because she was on the verge of death for a long time.
Right.
And pulled through
what a
it.
Mitzvah.
Yeah, she's awesome. Very empathetic, actually.
No doubt. No doubt.
She just is. Yeah, that has nothing to do with me. That was just her.
But just yeah. But you never. I think that. I can't even fathom people that leave cats and dogs in boxes, and I've come upon. I found a box of kittens like years ago, coming out of a restaurant, and I was like horrified. Like how I don't even know like how people can actually go, yep, this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, but we do more for those animals than we do for an old person with
100%.
dementia. That's why she even says in my short, I don't know if you remember the line, when she's so frustrated by the 911 operator telling her you have to take him to, just take him to the nearest hospital. It'll be a faster way to process him. She's so pissed off about it. When she gets in the car, she turns to him and says, why couldn't you be a cute little lost dog or something?
Exactly.
Much easier. But that goes back to the question I was asking.
Yeah.
Is there, if you call the police, are they going to do anything? Or are they going to just say, just dump them off at the hospital? If it's illegal.
I think it depends. So there's different, I've researched different things. You can actually call certain social services organizations, elder abandonment organizations. If you call 911, my understanding is that they'll tell you to take them to a hospital for processing. Or the police might come, but I don't know that it's an emergency type of situation. So I think it sort of differs. But you will, if you are found to be the person who's abandoned another human being, you will, there will be charges against you. Absolutely. I don't know what they are, but you will be.
But it just
charged.
shows you where they're. It just shows you where our elders are held in the society. The fact that let that you deal with it.
It's not, and it's not even just our elders. It's also disabled and mentally ill as well. Like, Can I just share a story? But before I do, what does SAVERIO stand for? Oh,
that's such a good question. So, 2 things. My grandfather is Sicilian. He's passed. He's from, his name is SAVERIO, and I've always loved it. And they called him Savvy, which I always loved. Aww. And so I just, thought, it'd be such a good way to use his name in something, and give a little homage to him. And then, it's also a Spanish name as well, and the Basque translation of that name is a new home. And then I thought, oh my gosh, is this perfect or what?
That's so profound. That's so profound. I just want to share a quick story that happened when I was hiking when we were living in Westchester in Culver City. People that don't know LA, and I'm doing the stairs, right? There's these stairs that go up the mountain. And at the beginning of it, it's like the path going up. And I'm walking up there and I see a homeless person lying across the pathway, like lying there face down. And I'm seeing people far away and they're like, walking around them and just chit-chatting still, just walking around them. And these 3 teen boys they've got their basketball and they're way ahead of me. And one of them like tosses the other guy and it misses and the basketball rolls all the way down the hill, down the path and hits the guy lying. Guy doesn't move. And I'm thinking, how did we get to this? Like I go up to him and I see he's like lying face down. His shoes are off. And people are just walking around, but keep talking, like, yeah, so I saw her yesterday, and they're just walking around and don't even acknowledge a human being lying in the ground.
Amazing.
I called 911, and they said, well, is he dead? And I said, I don't know. I'm standing right now, and I don't know if I should touch him or if I should. I said, sir, are you okay? But there's no answer. And I said, in any case, you should come and collect him. Because if he isn't dead, he's going to be. And I said, and then they said, okay, well, we'll send somebody over there. It was like, are you kidding? Like, I couldn't believe, like, nobody stopped and made a call. And then the 911 was saying, well, should we come? No, yes, you should come.
Yeah. Well, she has a little bit of that in my movie, too. She's like, I'd like to report a lost man. When did he go missing? Well, he's not missing. He's here, but, he's been left. And she's like, well, yeah, we see this, Yeah, we see this. Oh, we've seen that before. You just need to take him to the hospital. Like, no, I can't take him, You got to come get him. Oh, no.
And with our homeless problem, we see people all the time, who are either laying on the sidewalk or this, it's like, okay, that's their... either where they're living now, we don't know. So it's not like it's so unusual, especially in, bigger cities, that we see this. So it's like, it's not so special that it's like shocking to either the police or to other people. And it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs, really.
That's exactly right. We are numb to it. And that is another, we're very desensitized. And that's the other thing that I wanted to do is to make people, I shock people at the end a little bit. Shock's maybe too strong a word, but it gets people at the end when they see the statistic. And when they read that over 100,000 are abandoned every year, it's not just that. It's by people, usually family members, who can no longer or do not want to care for them. And that just breaks people's hearts. So...
It should. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And I talk about this all the time. We're living longer.
Yes.
But we're not living better. We're not living better at all. So, there's a whole industry behind longevity and extending our lives. But then how do we live a good life? In that chapter, in like Jane Fonda calls it, in your 3rd chapter. So it's just irresponsible. It's also, capitalistic and not humanistic, and it's all the bad things that have created it to this point where we are desensitized, where we can walk over a human being and not even think twice about it. And probably
what
it's like,
they're thinking is, I don't want to be involved in this.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Because you will become involved.
Yes, you will become involved.
You will, like your character. Like your character who had somewhere to go and had somewhere to be. And it really changed the trajectory of her life. Like it did. I won't give it away, but I mean, it really did change her perspective, and it's huge. It was huge.
In the feature version, it does the same, but over a longer period of time. But it's much more about the relationship between her and her mother and her identity to both her culture and this idea of what success looks like. And, and fulfillment. I mean, she people believe that being famous or successful is what is fulfilling in life, what's important in life. So that changes, but more than that, it's the way she sees her mother as a human versus as, an impediment to everything she wants.
I love that so much, Ellen. I love that so much. I really do. I think that's such a great story to tell, because it's actually authentic and real, because I got pulled out of my trajectory with my mom.
Yes.
And you just do, and you either go all in, and my feeling was like, I love this woman. I'm going all in because she needs me and I want to be there.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. I'm not saying everybody's cut out for it, but the point is that it really does put things into perspective. Like I'm thinking, I've really got to get Vestal Virgins out. This is really important. And this, and all these things that you're thinking that you're not attending to, that you need to, because that will make your life so much better. But honestly, this trip that I took with my mom, as hard as it's been and as heartbreaking as it's been, is become a purpose for me and much more fulfilling than I can imagine.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Of course. It's taken you on quite a journey, and I'm sure you struggle because as creatives and wanting to become, paid and successful and have that next job. I mean, we're programmed, right, to base our identity on our, last success. But your humanity has grown, and
so much, yeah.
And that will always be apparent in your work and make your work that much better. It'll make your work less hollow in terms of chasing something. I mean, to me anyway, it feels like it. It's been
I agree.
a pivot in terms of work, how I look at how to use art and creativity to, be better and to
Good.
help.
It's a segue. That's the segue about impact and art.
And
Like
storytelling. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, because you have that frame of mind now. Like, don't you agree? Like, even if you're doing a sitcom, isn't it better to give something, let people go, when they turn it off, think about something. Like, give them a gift, give them something that's worthwhile.
A takeaway.
Yeah.
And I always was interested in telling stories about women's sort of hardships or point of views or wanting to be heard or to being seen, in their power. But so it's just a slightly different, evolution of that. It's seeing women and men as we age, and I like to say fearlessly, but really, for me, the question is around how do we get caregiving to be just seamlessly into our society as just part of it, the way everything else in society, it just needs to be in the fabric of how we go through our family lives. Not something that people have to beg, borrow, and steal for. That's going to put people into bankruptcy. And I don't know how that. I really don't know how that happens. It doesn't seem like it's this country that will make it happen.
I think it can be, and I think that's why I have this hope with our movement, is to educate people or re-educate them in some cases that we've lost community, and and that sense of individualism that we have here, which is a Western kind of perspective, has permeated a lot of other cultures and a lot of other countries that used to have the community and family taking care of family and that kind of communal living situation where families lived like in the same block. It's just the way my mom grew up that way. Her aunts all they were walking distance. Everybody took care of everybody. We don't have that. And this idea of being individuals and, needing your boundaries, like my daughter's generation is all about boundaries. Gotta have your boundaries,
Which is fine. People can have their
It's
space
fine,
and their
yeah.
boundaries, but nobody can go on without community. I mean,
You have to, right?
well, it's one of the most important things to have in aging. I think they say that connection with other people is the number one thing to keep you having a healthy aging process.
100%. Do you know, here's my statistic, I say it all the time, the 200,000 nursing home residents during COVID died before their time because of isolation.
Yeah.
It's failure to thrive. It would happen to anybody. It would happen to children. We don't do that to children. And Dawn, to your point about what do you do when you find somebody, you would think that you could call adult protective services like you would call, children protective services, but it's not the same. They don't respond the same. Even adult protective services doesn't respond immediately. They'll say, well, we'll make a report and we'll follow up with it. Whereas with children, if it's 2 in the morning and you report,
like
they're
that.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the way we value, you call it an ageist society, which, I mean, I guess children represent something different. They're, hope, future, beginnings.
They're hope, they're cute.
Well, yeah. But that comes down to, he lived a good long life anyway, so it's fine.
Yes.
He's 84. Yeah, he lived a life, so it's not that big a loss. Yet they're, every, for an 84-year-old, 6 months of living is, I mean, that's more valuable than it is to
It is.
a 2-year-old. So but we don't see it that way. Unfortunately,
And it's okay to frame it that way too. If someone has a nice long life and they pass away, God bless them, and
Yes, and that's a wonderful thing. But
and that's beautiful. But nobody should be tortured. Nobody should be left like garbage on the street, and nobody should have to live in a facility
because
where
they
they're
had
being
that life. Yeah.
Right.
right. Yeah, and that's the dignity part that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think so. And I just wonder, regardless of ethnicity or, your social status, your, benefits, things like that, how can everyone be assured that transition to live out their last years, regardless of their situation, if it's Alzheimer's, dementia, physical disability, where they could be as comfortable, as happy, as surrounded by caring people, whether it's family or caregivers, as possible. How does that happen?
Comes with a system that affords that financially, meaning that if everyone knew that they're not going to end up on the street, there is a place for them. I think you still would have people saying, even though I can afford this, I don't want this person in my life anymore. It's too much of a burden. You'd still see stuff like this, but at least there'd be a place for them to go, and then you'd see a lot less of it. But some people, like you say, it doesn't excuse it, but some people are like, I don't know what else to do, and our society and our system doesn't allow a solution for that.
Well, that's why there's laws, and that's why but they're not. These things need to be enforced. There needs to be oversight that's actually real, because not everyone's going to behave in a way that you would want them to. So that's why we have a society and a community to pick up the pieces and to have an infrastructure that does, buoy the community to help them. And that's why we have it. But, every system gets gamed if you don't pay attention to it, because there's bad agents, and it just happens. If you don't watch it, then it will, if you don't keep eyes on it, it will get gamed by people that are, out
if
to
there's
get
money
a game,
there, it's
to
going to
make
get
money.
gamed. Yeah, if there's then it will.
So that's why we need the community to watch out for each other. That's why we don't let drunk drivers get away with things. We criminalize that, but we don't criminalize people that are putting these people in harm's way or using them. So those kinds of things need to change, because that will incentivize.
Yeah. Well, for me, right now the power I have is in telling the story to start conversation around it.
Totally.
So having those conversations, like at these Q&As or here with you guys, it's it feels like maybe we're tiny steps forward, moving the needle a tiny bit, just bringing awareness to it. But it's just, we've got to get it to the people in power to have way more interest and empathy in just creating safety nets for this process, this aging process.
Mm-hmm.
So
we have to demand it, because unless we demand it, we have to demand it. We have to. That's why we need to, like you said, we need to amplify the message, however you do it, through storytelling, which is, to me and you, I know that is powerful. It's the most powerful. And that really will activate people more than anything else,
Yeah,
That's really...
So.
I know so, because I guarantee you, I'm not with you on all of your Q&As, but I know that granny dumping, nobody knows about it.
No,
nobody knows about it.
And it doesn't sound real. It doesn't sound real either. That's the thing. It's like when I before we ever saw your film, I'd never heard the term. And I'm sure you maybe hadn't either until suddenly, nobody knows that, and it doesn't sound like it's a real thing. And,
right.
So
nobody would do that. Who would do that? Right.
Let alone 100,000 people a year.
Yeah.
That you know of. That you know
we
of.
know of, yeah.
And I, my friends and I, and my partner and I, we talk a lot about what's it going to look like for us? How are we going to create safety nets and communities? And and we've actually been starting to talk about a whole group of people. We're all going to take over this facility in, Altadena that is, supposedly okay. We're going to take it over. We'll make sure we get a good chef. We'll have pickleball. That's that. We're trying to figure it out. 15 years from now.
We've had that conversation too. We've had that conversation. Let's go buy this giant huge compound.
And make
compound.
a compound.
And 20 years ago, I was talking with friends about, okay, we're going to buy land and get prefab homes. And then we're going to hire a trainer, and we're going to hire a nurse, and we're going to hire... That was 20, years ago I was talking about that.
Good.
No, it's a model. It's a model.
It is a model. That's a great model. Yeah. Yeah, we should be able to live like that. I think I'm in.
Hey, we made fun of my parents for so many years about their little situation in Florida, in Delray Beach, Boynton Beach. And boy, did it extend their lives between, all the intellectual stimulation, going to the different lectures at the nearby colleges and the theater and the music, that they would see, the comedians that would come, playing cards, doing the dancing every Friday, doing shows. Living. Yes. Tennis. My dad played tennis into his late 80s. Insane. So all these different things kept them happy, healthy for the longest amount of time possible. And they died with dignity, both of them.
That's right. It's we just watched, which is a really good documentary, Paul Anka. And he was talking about this love of his life, his first wife. When they got to a certain age, she wanted to retire. She wanted him to retire, and that actually broke them up because he knew instinctively, if I retire, that's bye-bye.
Yeah, retire to expire. We always say
exactly.
He said, to retire to what? He would have, and he literally they divorced because of it, because she wanted him to. Not that they didn't like each other or anything, but she just said, "You need to stop."
Yeah,
and
you can't.
That's
to what end?
Man,
yeah,
and he is
to this day he's still doing it,
and he's really good. He sounds amazing. He's so funny and such a if I ever got to meet him, I would be so I would be a fangirl because he's so amazing and funny and lovely and all the things, and we would be missing out on so much if he was to retire and roll up in a ball.
Yeah. No, we say it all the time. You can't retire to expire. And what is it going to look like? My partner on the podcast, Filthy MILF, Sophie, her husband's about to retire from teaching, and she talks about it all the time. I'm terrified, she says. What is he going to do all day? He's just going to putt around the house. She's like, I am going to get a job. I'm never going to come home because I can't stand to be around this guy. He's going to take apart things and put them back together and just do that all day. There's like he's got no
it's
purpose.
having purpose. Yeah, you have to have purpose. I mean, well, you don't have to. Some people just want to retire. Some people just want to sit and rock on a rocking chair or golf every day, and that's fine. And that's good.
Is it fine though? It is.
Well, it's fine for them.
I was going to say that.
Want.
It is a slower. It's a faster way towards dying. I mean, we're all moving in that direction. You're just accelerating it by, doing nothing. I really believe
What's
that.
the point? Like, this is a trip. This is our little gift. We get to live this life. Why not live it?
It doesn't mean you have to go out and be like you, advocating, creating nonprofit to bring people, all this awareness. It doesn't mean you have to go out making films. It doesn't mean you have, but it does mean that you have to have a purpose in your life, and you have to be active, physically and mentally active.
A reason to get up.
A reason to get up. Yeah, and you must have community. A lot of men, in particular, will just sort of dwindle away on their own in the lazy boy, and that's fine by them.
Yeah,
so
it's what happened with my mom, and she, she's still hanging on, not well. But when she went to, finally, when we had her, she couldn't stay alone anymore, so she went to a beautiful community, wonderful facility, beautiful, social, this, that, and she didn't want. And she's a very social person. She just decided, nope, I'm going to just be in my room. And she went downhill so fast.
So fast.
We did everything we could to, and they tried getting her involved. And whenever she did, she liked it. But then it was just back to, no, I'm going to eat in. No, I'm not going to go down to the dining room. I'm going to just eat in my place. And just got worse and worse, and it builds on it. And it sped up her decline immensely.
Yeah, I don't know how you convince somebody. Sorry, go ahead.
I think you're talking about. I'm sorry. You talk. This is your interview.
No, I don't know how you convince somebody to have purpose or to think about it in a way of engagement. I don't know how you can convince somebody. But what were you saying, Susie?
No, that's her choice, and you have to respect that. That's my opinion. But I think that it's also part of the way we are now that you start devaluing yourself because you've reached that point. And so depression sets in, and shame, embarrassment, all the things. Like your mom didn't like it when she became incontinent, and she was embarrassed.
Exactly.
Sure.
And like if we talked more about it, and if we joked about it, and if many people knew that people in their 50s are incontinent, and that can happen, like we would make it more normal to be human.
Yeah.
And, there's so much, I think you mentioned in the very beginning, Ellen, is that people of a certain age have, they've aggregated so much experience. And you were talking about it as us putting it into filmmaking. There's so much to learn from older people. Like I tell the story about this older man, Jack, who was 94 or so at my mom's memory care, who had a crush on me. And he was such he was a celebrated war hero. I couldn't find out, but he was a lawyer, and then he was a judge.
And he flew planes,
and he flew planes. He was like everything, when he wouldn't talk to anybody, he was curmudgeon. And he had this gorgeous white hair. He was you could tell he was good looking at one point. And he was always wore his hoodie. He was in a wheelchair. But when I'd walk in, he'd go,
hunched over like this,
Then he'd sit up and go, Susie Singer Carter, I love you. You know that, right? And I go, I love you too, Jack. And he goes, you got to write my story. I go, let's go. Stop teasing. Let's do it. And then he goes, I got a story. I go, I know you got a story. And he goes, are we going to have sex? I go, no. He goes, I go, I'll scratch your back.
Listen, you can just say you're going to have sex to get the story.
He would have given it to me anyway. He was such an amazing soul, and he watched out for my mom because he didn't have Alzheimer's. I don't know why he was there. I think his family just put him, because he would go, I'm watching your mom when you're not here. So sweet. Yeah.
By the way,
so,
I just want to go back to something funny when you talked about people in their 50s having continence. We interviewed a comedian in her 40s, early 40s, and she says she pees a little when she laughs too hard. Starting in their 40s. I was like, see?
Yeah.
But having conversations about it or making it, not
normal. Yeah.
Normalizing.
I love what you guys are doing. I love your podcast. Yeah. I want everyone to listen to it. It's really good. And there's like a lot of sexy stuff too that,
Yeah, but
if you're a prude like me, then I learn things.
It is to kind of, again, it's about conversation. I mean, people, especially for some reason, people seem to become more puritanical as we get older, or prude as we get older. I don't know why. It's sort of like we go as kids, it's like, ooh, then we're like, yeah, we're teens and we're like rebellious, and then we're like having sex.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, I don't want to talk about it anymore. We sort of revert back. So we're trying to normalize conversations around it because it brings up aging. In a way, the different components of being a woman and aging and going through menopause and perimenopause and all that.
But don't you think it's also like a perspective of people saying, like it was like when you get hit a certain age, it's like, oh, that dirty old lady, instead of being like a sexy woman. She's a dirty old
woman,
lady.
But they don't say that about a man.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
But we're also, yeah. But you're welcome. But we're also like we just had.
You're welcome. Don's like, thank you.
we just had on somebody around long-term care and talking about the nuts and bolts of that because he's the CEO of one of the biggest management companies for the very big long-term care companies. And the truth is, we didn't get into actual numbers, but we did understand the various types of plans and what's entails. It's expensive. It's a premium. But from his perspective, everyone should have it. Well, yeah, of course. But it's like, an insurance policy that's almost prohibitively expensive for the majority of people. Anyway, we talk about things that aren't sexy too. It's my point.
No, they do. They do. They had me on. So, I was not talking about anything sexy. Although Jack did want to have sex with me. That was kind of fun. So, yeah. I have to find these things in what I'm doing these days. So, yeah. But is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to talk about? I know you're doing this. You're in the middle of writing, or I don't know how far you've gotten in your script on SAVERIO for the feature. I'm,
planning to try to raise the money and connect with elder abandonment, elder abuse organizations and different organizations to try to, not necessarily for money, but at least to legitimize the message of the project, to partner with me in that way. So, I'm not sure when we're going to shoot it, but I'd like to shoot it early next year if possible. So this is in about a month or two, probably when I get back from the Cannes Film Festival. That's when I'm going to start getting very active. And
see, she said Cannes, she's going. See that?
Yes,
you're
we
going.
can.
Yes, you're going. That's right. You're going to go and wear your ball dress all day long. Never take it off.
And sneakers.
And sneakers you can wear. If I, God willing, ever get to go again, I will definitely sneak some sneakers in for sure. Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing. I think what you guys are doing, and I love that you're tag teaming each other and helping each other through all this too. And your new organization, Roar, I'm so glad I'm on the list, and I'm looking forward to doing what I can to help with that. It's amazing. I can't believe you're starting a nonprofit.
I love it.
It started. There's a board of directors. There's the whole thing. It's going.
Oh yeah,
many volunteers at this point.
I'm fancy and organized now. Yeah.
And it's such a great name. Be a warrior. I love that. It's just really it's fun. So
thank you, Ellen. Well, I love you. We're rooting for you all the way, and I just wanted you to know that because I just think what you're doing is fantastic, and I'm happy. I'm glad that we're colleagues, and I'm glad that we're kind of on a parallel journey. So
I'm like right behind you, right? You're but I'm not going to start a nonprofit. I'm just going to be part of yours.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Just help us with ours.
Yes,
just help us with ours.
I will.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for coming with us, and everybody. Don't we just bring people that are so lovely? We have the loveliest guests.
They're lovely. They're filled with love. And you know why. Why? You know why we have
I
these
know
lovely
why.
people on
But
who
you can
love
say
love.
it.
That's
Yeah.
because love is powerful. Love is contagious, and love conquers alls. We thank everybody for
does.
watching, listening today. If you like what you saw, please share, subscribe, do all those fun things.
Well, let me just give one last plug.
Yes.
Go to the roar4ltc.org and check out our walk for awareness, and we would love you to be a part of it. So check it out, and I'll keep reminding you. So until then, I love you, and have a wonderful day.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.